Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Simone here. Today I'm going to be filming my January wrap-up, and I read 10 books in the month of January. Some good, others not so good, but overall it was a pretty successful month. So let's get started and I'll let you know what I read. So the first book that I read in January was the first book from my Project Thriller TBR, and I set off the year with a good start because I read The Surgeon by Tess Gerritsen, which is the first book in the Rosalian Isles series. And I gave this one a 5-star. I really enjoyed this. I have read this one before, but it was quite a long time ago, and I really want to get into this series in general because I haven't read any more. The only thing I will say about this one, if you've seen the TV show of Rosalian Isles or you've read any of the other books, don't really expect this to be the same because Maura Isles is actually not in this book. She, I think, comes in like book 2 or 3 of the series. Jane Rizzoli is in this one though. She is the detective, and along with her partner, Thomas More, they are investigating a string of homicides where basically women are being attacked in their homes and they're being tortured and mutilated before finally being murdered. Now all of this is linked, what's happening in Boston at this point is all linked to a similar string of murders that happened 2 years previously, where it ended in a woman named Catherine Cordell, who is an A&E surgeon, who actually shot and killed her attacker, who was doing very similar things before, while she was under attack at the time, and it seems to be linked very closely to what's happening now, and it's kind of all about that. Like I said, I absolutely adored this book. I really found it interesting. What I love most is in general about Tess Gerritsen's books is that she has a lot of medical background as far as I know, and she actually really goes into quite a bit of detail about kind of the medical stuff, which I find really fascinating. And yeah, generally I just really liked this one. It was really thrilling. Honestly, I'd forgotten what happened, so when I got to the end of this, I didn't know what was going to happen, so that was great because, you know, it's always good to kind of not know where it's going. I absolutely love this. Like I said, I can't wait to read the next one in the series, and I'm really glad that I actually gave this one another go. The next book I read was Geek Girl by Holly Smale. I gave this a 1-star. I really did not enjoy this book. It was the writing style of it, and I don't know, it's just not my type of thing, I don't think. It basically follows a girl named Harriet who is a bit of a geek, and she doesn't seem to understand why nobody at school seems to like her, and she doesn't really have any friends, and then she tries to reinvent herself basically and transform herself from geek to chic, and it's just not my thing. I had this on my shelf. I've had it on my shelf for a really long time, and as you might know, in January when I did my January TBR, which I'll link below, this was the random book pick that I chose. And I just didn't like it. It really wasn't for me, and it was the writing style of it was very kind of cheesy and a bit cliche, and yeah, it was just too much of kind of wishy-washiness and nothing substantial behind the story for me, so this was definitely not a book for me. The next book I read was one that I have been saying how nervous I have been to read this book, and I am really glad that I did read it. So this is one of my sign up to the TBR picks for my 4th lot, which I'll link the video down below that I did of that, but it is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, which I now own all the books for because my mum found the 2nd and 3rd book in the charity shop. But I adored this book. I gave this a 5-star. It was amazing. I'm so glad I finally read it. I don't know what I was worried about. I have said before that high fantasy is really not my thing, but the way this is written and the world building makes it so easy to understand. It's not kind of confusing, and like a lot of time the reason I don't really understand high fantasy is I feel like it goes over my head, and I just find it really overwhelming and completely different to anything I've read before. But this was just really well explained, but it didn't feel like it was being patronising. It just really worked well. This basically follows a world where the Dark Lord or the Dark Ruler has won and is kind of in control of the world that it's sort of set in, and it follows a group of people who basically are trying to go against that, really. And the best part about this that I really enjoyed was that it follows, they basically can do allomancy, some of them, which is like working with metals, and they can pull metals to like do certain things for them. And if they can use all the metals, I think they're called a Mistborn, but if they can use like one of the metals to their advantage, they're called a Misting, I think it's called. yeah, so basically, yeah, like I said, I loved this one. It was really, really well written, kept me on the edge of my seat. I kept wanting to read it even though it is quite a big book. And yeah, I'm really, really glad that I finally got to this one. This is the second Brandon Sanderson book I've read and given 5 stars. So I definitely think I need to continue with the trilogy and also read some more of his others, because I tried to read The Way of Kings quite a long time ago and I really did not like it. I didn't get on with it at all. But I think maybe if I tried to reread it now, I might find something interesting in it. Next up is another one of my Stand Up to the TBR books, and this one is 102 Minutes, The Untold Story of the Fight to Survive Inside the Twin Towers by Jim Dwyer and Kevin Flynn. This book was really, really difficult read, and I ended up giving it a 3-star. It basically is a story of, like I said, the 102 minutes when the Twin Towers were attacked by the terrorists in the aeroplanes, and it basically, as most people know, the Twin Towers collapsed and killed a lot of people. The thing I liked about this book is it doesn't actually talk about the terrorists or about why they did it or anything like that. This book is merely talking about the people in the tower and how they survived or didn't survive, what they were doing at that time, why the towers collapsed, survivors. It was all about the actual people, and I think for me that was what was amazing about this book. I think in things like this, I think it's easy to forget or to think of the victims as such a big number, but it was really interesting in this to kind of get a bit more information about the people themselves and learn about the victims, because, you know, those people didn't have a choice in this. Obviously this happened to them, and it's nice to be able to kind of almost like given a face to the names, if that makes sense. So this I really, really enjoyed for that reason. I say enjoyed, obviously it's a horrendous thing that happened and lots of people died and it's really horrible and heartbreaking, but I liked the humanity of it, I guess. The reason I only gave it a 3-star was because there was a lot of names. So that obviously in this there's obviously so many people that did die, unfortunately, and they did focus on quite a lot of different people in this, and so it did get a bit difficult to kind of like figure out who was who and sort of stay with that rather than just be reading names after names after names. So yeah, that's the reason I give it a 3-star, but I really did enjoy it, and I think, again, like I say, enjoy is a difficult word to say, but I found it really fascinating is what I should say, and I would recommend that if you don't know too much else about it, or if you know about the kind of terrorist side of it but not the humanity of it, I would definitely recommend this book because I think it is really well done and very kind of politely done. It's not done in a kind of offensive way at all. The next book I read was another reread, and that was The DaVinci Code by Dan Brown, which is the second book in the Robert Langdon series. You may know I read Angels and Demons last year and I really enjoyed it. I gave this one a 4-star and I have previously read it, as I said. This obviously is part of the series and I want to continue on the series with the books I haven't read, so I need to kind of get through the ones I have read. Again, this is quite a big book, so I'm quite proud of myself. I think I read quite a few big books this month, even though to me 10 is still a great number, but a lot of them were bigger ones as well, which just makes it even better. This one follows basically the head of the Louvre in Paris, who is killed, and he positions his body in such a way that he leaves clues behind for Robert Langdon, who is a Harvard symbologist, and his granddaughter Sophie Neveu, and the two of them then try to use those clues to figure out who killed him and why, and it goes into so much more information about Leonardo da Vinci and a lot about the Holy Grail as well, which is something that I didn't really know too much about before reading this book. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting story. It's very wordy and it does go on for quite a long time, which is why I only gave this a 4-star, not a 5, because there were parts of it where I was just like, okay, get to the point. Obviously, having read this before as well, I feel like, I don't know if it's as good on a reread. I think that I said the same about the Angels and Demons. It took me quite a long time to read because I did feel like, having read it before, I was kind of like, gets to the point where you're just like, okay, I've read that already, like, come on. And also I've seen the film of this and I think the film is a really good adaptation as well. So if you don't want to read the book because it's quite long and whatever, I would recommend the film, or if you've read the book or seen the film, to do the opposite, definitely. Like I said, really liked this one, gave it a 4-star. I'm glad that I'm reading it, and I can't wait to read the next one, which I think is The Lost Symbol. but I'm not 100% sure. The next book I read I don't actually have a physical copy of anymore because I read a library copy that I've had to take back, but I read Cress by Marissa Meyer, which is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles, and this is probably my favourite book of the series so far. I love the Lunar Chronicles in general, and I feel like it used to be talked about a lot and then it stopped for a little while, but I feel like it's really coming back now, or whether that's just the people that I watch who are kind of reading it at the moment and loving it. I gave Cress a 5-star, and if you watched my January favourites you'll know that it was actually my favourite book of the month. Basically, the Lunar Chronicles in general is sort of, I think it's 4 main books, but I think there's some others as well. But the 4 main books are all kind of fairy tale retellings of type, and then they kind of all mix together. So the first one, Cinder, was a Cinderella retelling where Cinder is a cyborg. The second one, Scarlet, was a Red Riding Hood retelling. This one, Cress, is a Rapunzel retelling, and then the fourth one, Winter, which I obviously haven't read yet, is, I believe, a Snow White retelling. And it's just amazing. Honestly, the characters in it are incredible. There's a very evil villain that just is one of those amazing, amazing villains, and it's just written really well. I love Marissa Meyer in general. I read Heartless by her and absolutely loved it, so I think she's just an author that I'm really going to enjoy, and yeah, I can't wait to get to Winter as well, because I think that one's going to really be amazing. And I also think the relationships in this book, there are so many different like relationships, not just like romantic relationships but friendships as well, and I think they're all done really well, and that just the connections between everybody is great. And it's a really kind of like heartbreaking but also like amazing like cozy reading as well, so I absolutely love that, like I said, and it just, I don't know, there's just something about it which is really, really great. So yeah, I definitely would recommend, and I can't wait to get to the next one. The next book I read was not on my TBR, but I decided to pick it up because I wanted like an easy book to read, and I have been warned against this book by somebody that I used to work with, and she was like, don't bother because it's really, really not great. And that was After You by Jojo Moyes, which is the sequel to Me Before You. Now, most people know Me Before You has had a lot of flack for being ableist and just not being a great story in terms of representation. Now, if you don't know, Me Before You follows Will and Lou, and basically Will is a quadriplegic, so he's paralysed from the neck down, and Lou becomes his kind of carer, and it's about their relationship and the things that happen. And after the events of the first book, this is where this book comes in, so it's set not, I think it's about a month after that one actually. Basically it's about what happened to Lou after the events of the first story, like I said. I don't think this needed to be written. I also think there's a third one called like Still You, or Still, what's it called? Still something. Still, I honestly don't know. Which I don't know that I'm going to read, to be honest with you. I read this one because I'd already bought it before I was told it was not good, and I thought I might as well read it, it's on my shelf and then I can get rid of it. It was, if you read it as a story in its own right, which is difficult to do because obviously it follows on, but if you read it like briefly knowing about it but didn't think of it as a sequel, it would be alright, I guess, as a story on its own. But having read the first one, I'm like, this wasn't necessary. I just found it a little bit insensitive at times, and yeah, I don't know, it was a bit strange. I think it was interesting because it did talk about, there was a lot of like grief elements in this, and like responsibility and stuff, but I don't think it was even that, I don't think it was necessary. I did give this a 3-star because it was okay when I was reading it, but it's not one I'd ever go back to read again, and I just don't think I would continue on with the series either. I mean, never say never, but it's just not really my intention at the minute. So yeah, I think if you've read Me Before You, I just don't think you really need to get on to this one, to be honest with you, now that I've read it. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this one. Okay, so the next one I read is going to be a really difficult one to explain, but I'm going to try my best. So I read The Accident by C.L. Taylor. Now, I read a C.L. Taylor book, The Missing, last year and absolutely loved it. I think I might have even given it a 5-star. It was either a 4 or a 5, I can't remember. I gave this one a 2-star because I don't think that everybody will hate this one. I didn't hate it either, this is not a story for me. This has a lot of triggers for me, and I think that was why I didn't enjoy it as much. I found it really uncomfortable to read and really kind of disturbing for me. This follows a woman named Sue Jackson. I'm going to have to read a little bit off the back, so I can't fully remember their names. So it follows Sue Jackson, whose teenage daughter Charlotte walks in front of a bus and ends up in a coma, and that happens at the beginning of the story. And then it's a case of Sue reads Charlotte's diary, and at the end of the diary it says something about her keeping a secret. And and then it's about Sue essentially trying to investigate what happened and why she decided to do this and all the other things. Now that in itself, that storyline of this was fine and I had no problems with it, and if it had just been that, it would have been great. Now I don't think this is a spoiler as such because it does happen right at the start, so I don't think it's a spoiler. So I'm going to say, obviously, if you don't want to know anything about this book and you want to go into it completely blind, then just wait, when I put this book down, skip it. But it's not a spoiler as such, it's just a little bit of information, as like a little warning, I guess. So basically, interspersed, so this book is in two different sort of timelines, I guess. So the main timeline, like I said, is the one where Sue's trying to find out what happened to her daughter. The other timeline is something that happened to Sue like years before, where she was in an abusive relationship with a man who, like I said, abused her physically, mentally, sexually, and she has been left scarred by this, and she had like a nervous breakdown essentially, and you know that she got out of this obviously because now she's got a family and she's got a child. But because she had this, the thing that I don't like about it and the thing that triggers me a lot is that because she's had this nervous breakdown in the past, every time she brings up something that she is concerned about or she's worried or in that way, if that makes sense, her husband and the people around her are kind of like, you need to take medication, like I think you're having a breakdown again, like it's not going well for you, and they don't believe her. And that really upsets me, it makes me really uncomfortable. I've read other books like this in the past that also made me feel the same way, and they make me really sick to my stomach. I only finished reading this book because I wanted to know what happened, and I really had to keep taking breaks because, like I said, this makes me so uncomfortable, and I really hate that storyline, and it really triggered me. Like, I don't get triggered by books very often, but this one really did, and it made me so anxious and sick, and I just, yeah, I don't really want to, like I said, talk about it again too much, but just know that I personally would not recommend this one. I think C.L. Taylor's writing is amazing. I loved The Missing, and I do own The Lie as well, which I'm hoping to read, but I personally would skip The Accident. So, penultimate book that I read in January was a buddy read that I read with Mary from With Cinnamon Please, and I'll link her channel down below because I think she's incredible. And we have buddy read a book before, and it was such a fun experience that we decided, Mary basically did a video, which I'll link below, of I think she's doing like a challenge this year where she wants to read a certain number of like really popular books in terms of like classics and stuff. Again, I'll link the video down below for you. So in that video, she basically talked about some of the books she wanted to read, and I was like, should we buddy read one of them? And she was like, yeah, which one? And we decided on this one because it was the shortest, and also because I was interested and I didn't know anything about it, and that is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which follows a boy named Holden Caulfield, who, do you know, I can't even explain to you what it's about because I still don't really know. I gave this book a 2-star. Mary and I were not fans of this book, and I was reading on Goodreads and all the reviews were like amazing and everybody seemed to love it, and I just don't understand. I can't explain to you because I don't really understand what this book is even meant to be about. It's supposed to be a coming of age story of a boy who has some, I guess, mental health issues, and I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. There was no point to it. I didn't enjoy Holden as a character. He was rude about women. He was incredibly sexist, and I found him to be incredibly dislikable. And things kept happening, and we were like, but why? Like, what does that mean? Like, what are we supposed to be getting from this? And yeah, it just didn't make any sense. So I personally really did not like this book. The only thing I liked about it, the reason why I gave it 2-star and not a 1, was Holden's little sister Phoebe, who has kind of a role in it towards the end of the book. And she just was lovely. She was like a breath of fresh air reading this book. And the relationship between the two of them is a really nice relationship. But the rest of it I couldn't understand, and to be honest with you, like I said, I read this book and I still don't understand it, so please enlighten me, but otherwise not a clue, and I really did not enjoy it. And then the final book that I read in the month of January was The Swimming Pool by Louise Candlish, and I gave this a 5-star, and I'm not surprised I gave it a 5-star. You might know in July last year I read the Disappearance of Emily Marr by Louise Candlish, and if you watched my best of 2018 books, I'll link that video down below. I said it was one of my favourite books of the year, and it definitely was that. So I thought, when I saw in my local library that they had another Louise Candlish book, I was like, I need to pick it up, obviously. And so I did, and I loved it. It basically follows our main character. Couldn't tell you her name because I can't remember. Basically, the main character in the swimming pool has a husband and a daughter who basically, her daughter has what she calls, is it aquaphobia? Where basically she's terrified of water in terms of going in water, in pools and stuff. Like, it just, the idea of it terrifies her because of something that happened when she was younger. Anyway, in their local area, a Lido is opened, and obviously there's a big swimming pool, and it all kind of opens and everybody's really excited about it. And there, the main character and her husband meet a woman named Lara, who is a big deal in terms of she actually was one of the people that helped sort out this Lido, and it's all very exciting. And in the end, the main character ends up spending all of her spare time at this Lido with this woman, and then she starts to realise that things are not quite what they seem, and perhaps there are some sinister things going on. Again, I can't really go into too much information about it, but I really loved this. Like I said, I find Louise Candlish's writing really interesting, and I never see coming what she's got involved in. About 3/4 of the way through, I was like, oh, I think I know what it might be. I actually think I might have worked this one out. It wasn't that. It was something completely different, and I was like, oh, well, that was me thinking I knew what I was talking about, and I didn't. So yeah, I generally would recommend Louise Candlish in general, but I did enjoy this one a lot. So there you have it, guys. That is all of the books that I read in the month of January. I had a really good reading month, and I'm hoping that it continues. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you tomorrow for a bonus collaboration video. See you then. Bye, guys.